So we left here, I think if you remember, we barely remember, the Tuesday after SRW, and we flew to Assisi, our community there, and we were there for 3 weeks. And you'll see all this on the slides, but just to give you an overview of the flow. And we did a lot of programs there, met with the community, met with the school leaders, did a beautiful Kriya retreat, did programs on Patanjali, and broke ground on their beautiful new temple, which they're calling the Temple of Joy. They're using the same affirmation that we're using to kind of magnetize it. And so we left here, and as we said the other night, broke ground on, or dedicated the site of our temple, dedicated the site of their temple. And then,
but maybe as an overview, everywhere we've gone, we're outgrowing. Ananda's expanding quite rapidly, and we're outgrowing the facilities. And so it's not just that Assisi needs a new temple. They had such a successful summer in terms of guests coming that there were some programs where they had to start turning people away because they simply did not have space. They would have every room. They took over facilities that were meant for other reasons, for the community and so on. So they really have absolutely run out of room there. And that's in a relatively difficult economic time.
And I think if we would get an overview of the whole trip, it was new expansion, two qualities, new expansion and involvement of new people, and primarily younger people too. This is Assisi and India. And so it's like Jaya put it very well. He met with us shortly after we arrived, and he said, our job is to train our successors. And you just had to see that happening everywhere. And quality, dedicated people. And it's so, and deeply in tune and willing to do whatever it takes to, as we all did. And I should say, picking it up with the same spirit. And so
a couple of years ago when we were in Assisi, there was not enough involvement with young people. And so we really urged them to start turning over responsibility to a new group of people. And they've done that beautifully. So there are a lot of new people in key positions that are now there. And obviously in India, we have to work and turn over to newer people, because in all of India there are like, 8 or 10 Americans who've been trained here. So.
And plus the language.
Yeah, plus the languages and the cultural differences.
One setback that they had in Assisi, you may remember, right before we left, you may have seen, we went to visit this new school, that beautiful new facility that kind of magically was offered to us, 2-story, renovated after the earthquake that happened several years ago. And they were just so excited and figuring out how they could use it. Well, things began shifting, and the woman, most of you probably know Gori, her name was Efja. She's from Belgium. She was in charge of the school. But as things unfolded, it turned out that this building needed at least $30,000 worth of repair before it was usable. And our student population, for whatever reason, began diminishing. And so there were only 9 students in an age range from 5 to 12, so it wasn't even one class. And there was just not a stable base to build on. So Gori made the decision, it was a hard decision to make, to take a pause here in the school. And so they don't have an Assisi school. By the end of all the shuffles, there were really just a handful of kids that were going to be attending, and they are just in public schools now. But they're using that year. Gori will still be on staff. and to train teachers, really train them as EFL teachers, to educate the parents about what EFL is, because that was one of the things that was dividing the school. People really didn't understand EFL, and why are we doing it this way, and da-da-da-da. So there was a lot of disharmony, which made it very difficult. Anyway, they're taking a pause here, and hopefully next year they'll rebuild. And then next year also, you may be starting to get the publicity, end of August, beginning of September. We humbly called it the International Kriyaban Retreat, but Shivani is calling it the Intercontinental Kriyaban Retreat. And then we're figuring in a couple of years it'll be the Intergalactic Kriyaban Retreat. And so, but it really...
But to give her credit, in Europe, international could mean England and France and Germany and Switzerland and Italy and Spain. So intercontinental is more descriptive. Nonetheless,
right.
It is Shivani who's behind this.
But it should be a wonderful experience. And then they're tagging onto it at the end, touring of the sacred places in Italy. So whoever can come will be going. Diana will be coming from, and Devarshi, who's doing amazingly well, we'll get to that. They'll be coming from India and other Kriyabans from around the world. So anyway, it should be.
So if you can go in the fall, that's going to be a really very beautiful and expansive time for there. Just a little background. Italy, doing communities is a very, very interesting proposition. We kind of live and breathe in this community, so we think, well, they're easy to do, but they aren't easy to do at all. And Italy is struggling to do community. They started out as a retreat, and everybody who was there worked on staff, and they all had their meals together, and they all drove cars and so on. And that works quite well for people who are young and dedicated and single, but it doesn't work very well for creating a community. And so when families are starting to come, also because of the land regulations, they've never had a single piece of land. And so they have a piece of land that is where the retreat is, their version of the expanding light. Imagine having the expanding light and the area surrounding it, and that's the whole of your community. Everybody else has to rent.
Private ownership.
Yeah, private ownership. Everybody else has to rent in the area. And so they're now struggling to try to get community in a real sense. And that's why it plays also into the school, because unlike here, where we had a lot of children and we had to find education opportunities, they don't have a lot of children in the kind of group that lives there. And so anyway, every community has its own set of challenges, and God keeps us on our toes.
Their agricultural efforts are tremendous, beautiful. They call it terre de luce, lands of light, and beautiful orchards and wonderful soil, and stop up your ears, Ananda Maria, plenty of water, and on and on. But it's a lot easier there. And so,
but the same here, crops but no money.
Yeah,
and so they're struggling financially. It's hard for small agriculture to go up against mass agriculture anywhere in the world.
And then just before we left, you'll see in the slides, there was a wonderful World Peace Conference put on by a Japanese woman and her staff who go all over the world and do these things. And wherever they go, they invite religious leaders from different faiths to speak. And so this was put on at the Assisi Temple, and there was a Buddhist priest, a Muslim imam,
a Christian monk,
the two of us.
A man from a kind of it's not a New Age religion, but it's a work in Italy on forgiveness.
And compassion.
And compassion.
And it
he's
seemed like
very
there
well
was
known.
one other two. Anyway, everyone spoke very...
Oh, Baha'i.
Yeah, that's right, the Baha'i man. Everyone spoke beautifully. And then you may have seen pictures on Facebook. Then we went out into that big open circular courtyard, and they had flags from this woman who puts it on and travels with this, all the props. And there were flags from every nation, full size. And so just everyone and the little children, so they'd get a flag, they'd stand up on this little raised platform and they'd say, "The Republic of Congo," and everyone would say, "Om," and then they'd go and plant that, and so we blessed every single nation. It was really quite moving.
Yeah, and then they'd repeat a little prayer, "May there be peace in the nation of the Congo," and then we'd chant Om 3 times. And for me, it was a very, very powerful experience, because there were a lot of countries that I realized subconsciously when they would name that country Afghanistan or Iran, I would have a little bit of a negative mindset, subconscious, negative, that it's a bad government over there, or whatever it was. But doing that peace prayer for every country, it felt like there was one world that we all live on, and there are forces, the media especially, that divide the peoples of the country. Governments and media divide rather than unite. And this was an opportunity to get beyond that and feel the unity of all people on this earth. Everybody wants peace, basically.
So after that, we had a few days with Shivani, Arjuna, Uma. Those of you who know Uma, she had a very bad fall this year. She's doing just fine now, just up and running full speed, and a lot of karma worked out. So Kirtani, Ananda, and Uma, Shivani, Arjuna, and Jyotish, and I had a few days.
And Narya and Laura, for those who know.
Narya and Laura too. By the shore outside of Rome before we flew out. No, it's a simple hotel that they often bring pilgrims to, but it's right on the
Water there.
Yeah, the Mediterranean. So you can just walk along, big paths along. It's very nice. So then we flew to India, and we got there about September 8th, I think, or 8th or 9th. And we had we have an apartment in the Gurgaon Ashram, which is kind of a suburb of New Delhi. And it's a large, beautiful ashram. And as we mentioned to some of you, we're seeing this pattern that the beautiful ashram in Gurgaon, the beautiful new center in Chennai, you'll see all these things, the magnificent center in Panchil Park, all belong to either center members or their family, and they're renting them to us for, like the beautiful center in Panchil Park, we pay, because you have to legally pay, we pay 1 rupee a month rent. And it's like in the highest rent district of Delhi. So anyway, it's kind of amazing how we're just seeing this is how India works. It's family, you're a part of us, we will do anything we can to help you. And so it's really beautiful to see that. And we were there for a couple of weeks. We did Swami's birthday, our spiritual anniversary, and then they had the spiritual fair in Delhi, and that was a magnificent thing. It was 2 full days. They rented this whole big hotel facility, which had a big lecture hall and multiple other halls. And again, many of our new teachers were teaching simultaneously in different places. And then we gave a keynote talk on the autobiography of a yogi. And they had booths in this different floors, had these big kind of open courtyard areas. And we had booths for everything that we do, for the charitable trust in Vrindavan, for the publications, for the different center boutiques, just everything that is going on.
We're beyond the overview here, so I think we ought to go. I think we ought to go to the slides, and then we can talk about the various things. Okay, this is after the gathering of the flags. Then you can see how they've arranged them. So that's groupings of flags of every country in the world.
And then we did this wonderful Sufi dance, and that's the Christian monk, the Tibetan Buddhist priest, the Imam Narya Nandini, who heads up the publications and was the co-sponsor, and then this man in the front was the movement of compassion. So this is their new temple. This is a schematic done by Julian Potter, for those of you who know him, who designed it actually. And it's to the right and up the hill from the existing temple. So now we know what we have to do for our new project.
Panduranga is on it.
Okay,
So then after the dedication of that, we went to India, and to my left, as you're looking at it, is our little apartment. And to Devi's right, as you're looking at it, is Dhyana's apartment. These are kind of like two little houses, or two houses that are mirror images of each other, with a courtyard in the center.
So this was in the front garden of the ashram, and these were core members from all the major centers in what we call NCR, National Capital Region. So from Gurgaon, from Delhi, where Dayan Keshav are, from Noida, there's an active center in West Delhi, and so all these different groups, like 10 or so core, 10 to 12 core members from each of these groups all came to greet us for Swami's anniversary. Yeah, that's at a satsang inside the ashram. And behind, as you can see, there isn't a lot of room in the satsang room. So behind us there's a wall, and right before we left, they knocked that wall out and connected it to a small adjoining room. So now the satsang room holds about twice as many people.
They prefer coming to the ashram than to the center. It's more familial.
And to Jyotish's left, as we're facing, is Swami's dear friend and our dear friend, the man with the cane, Indu Ban. And this is Rani Ban's son. He was one of Swami's two right-hand men on the Delhi project. He was a Supreme Court justice in Delhi. Very fine family, if you recall, Rani and Indu. And he's still alive. He's in very poor health, but he insisted on coming. The man next to him is also a judge, a friend of his, who we just met. But it's just very touching to be with Indu, a very dear soul. And Dayan Keshava came, obviously. And then this was the spiritual fair in Tivoli Garden Hotel, Chattarpur, New Delhi. And so this is one of the areas where we had all these different displays. Just out of interest, the table closest to us, the middle guy in the striped shirt, he's an American who is part of the diplomatic corps of the Indian embassy. He's preparing for Korea. He's American, and very nice man. And so these were just all different activities that were, people were just starting to arrive. That's us giving the keynote talk on Autobiography of a Yogi. So that was the main hall, but there were other halls happening at the same time, actually. And then these are, you remember Daljit, the man in the turban, who, wonderful, dear, supporting, helping fellow, and then this was a satsang at a beautiful home in Gurgaon. I mean, in the midst of this busy city. This family bought it like a generation ago, before Gurgaon was built up. And so this is all their property, right outside of the city. So this was the kind of supporting members. And so we had a special satsang there. Swami gave a satsang there shortly before he left India, and he just loved it. So people love to go there. The woman, sort of right behind the fan in the pink clothes, that's her property. And the man with the blue shirt, it's Manjari and Mickey. Manjari was actually here last year, if any of you met her, and Mickey is her husband in the blue shirt. So this is their property.
This is now the Paramahansa Yogananda Charitable Trust in Vrindavan. And this group are the ladies who are sewing the various kinds of bags and different products. And the woman kind of to my right, as you're looking, the woman with the curly hair that's got the glasses, she is a high-end designer and is
I'll
helping.
just point her out.
Yeah, helping to train.
She was here for SRW, Sonia.
Yeah, Sonia. And in the bottom right-hand corner is Manjunath, who is in charge of all the charitable work in India. And so we're visiting, and we started out the visit with these ladies who are sewing.
Manjunath's mother died recently, and so the tradition is you shave your head when one of your parents die.
This is the official dedication of the charitable trust. And so all of the dignitaries from the town, I'm giving a talk here. It's kind of reddish because it's under what they would call a pandal with a cloth up above.
And so these are all the man who's speaking is obviously a Swami, and they're all thanking. It's all about the work we're doing, thanking us and appreciating the service we're doing. And you can see Manjunath's on the right, and then one of the men is from the government office, one's the head of the police department, and the man speaking is a Ramakrishna Swami. And it was, if you can notice, I have a very interesting expression on my face because we couldn't understand anything that any of them said. But there were all these monkeys on the other side of the pandal, and they were playing and tearing down the flowers, and so we were just watching the monkeys.
Highly entertaining, much more so than listening to the mayor of Vrindavan speak in Hindi for us. This is the staff, wonderful, wonderful staff that they have. As we've described before, we won't go into it in detail, but this staff, we work with about 5,000 to 6,000 widows. They get monthly food, they get complete free medical care, and one of the primary things that we're doing is visiting them in the places that they live. Those who can't maintain themselves, we also are housing in 4 different places, I think about 120 now, and we're just this is on our property that we own, where this dedication took place, and we will be building a facility there that will be able to house several hundred widows.
And we're also going to be starting a hospice center because many of them that come have been, really living on the streets. And Jaya just sent us a very moving article about the widows of Vrindavan, and it was on BBC News, and how, it still happens all the time, no matter how old you are. If your husband dies, very often the families and the in-laws, from one day to the next, you're out on the street with nothing to your name. And so many of them have lived very hard lives and have had no health care. So many of them are dying of diseases. So we're trying to create a separate facility for the hospice work, where the other can be for people who can really be more active.
And then, of course, as you saw in a previous slide, one of our major endeavors is to begin to provide employment for those who can work, so that they can reclaim a life that's valid and has a future. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful work.
And I just want to point out, second from the right, there's a beautiful face between 2 women. She has her arms around them. This is Manjunath's wife, Lakshmi, and she's also, Manjunath he has an apartment. Their family lives in Delhi, but from Monday through Friday, he has an apartment in Vrindavan, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive, so he doesn't have to do that every day. And she comes very often and stays. Just a beautiful soul.
Then we flew to Chennai.
And this is footage of them moving the murtis at 3 o'clock in the morning from the old center to the new center. They had to get police permission so they would know it was legal. And you can, this, I think Dharmarajan just took this on his cell phone.
Why did they do it at 3 a.m.?
Because that's the time when there's the least traffic.
Yeah. It would be dangerous, probably impossible during daylight hours.
I thought did they just have a cyclone?
A cyclone in Chennai?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. Tell them about moving the murtis.
Dharmarajan, who's carrying Sri Yukteswar, and Dharmini, from the old center, he said that about a week later, after they moved the murtis, he visited the old center, and he said there was absolutely no spiritual vibration there. That when the murtis moved, the spirituality moved from that apartment. And now we have a place that's 4 times as big as what we had before, and it's going to be a beautiful center.
So this is doing a fire ceremony to bless it.
That the man in the yellow shirt is one of India's, is Sairam. He's a Kriyaban, sweet as can be. He has won many awards that would be the equivalent to our Emmys. He's the best known villain on TV in India. He's known for these intricate plots to bilk people out of their money, and then when he finally succeeds, he spins his head real fast, and everybody loves it.
So this was inside before we went out for the fire ceremony, and you see Sri Kartikeyan, and he is such a devoted friend. He really, he didn't know Swami very long, but it was like they were spiritual brothers. And he's from this area, from Chennai, although he's based in Delhi. And if you remember, he was former head of the Indian equivalent of the FBI and did a lot of major investigation. But he took Kriya last year during the Moksha Mandir dedication, and he comes to virtually, I would say about half the major programs we give, he comes just to lend his, his Indian authenticity to what Ananda is doing.
He travels incessantly from spiritual group to spiritual group, but also he's, a member of the UN, and he speaks on, he's constantly moving around trying to bring light into the world. He's a great, great soul.
This big brass pole, sort of as you see, I'm just behind it. This is called the diya, and it means light. And every big event or dedication or talk, you always have a diya, and it's got ghee or oil in that little bowl, and then there's these little wicks that come out, and everybody has to light one. And it's always interesting because sometimes they light and sometimes they don't, and you're kind of standing there trying to do it. But that's what Sri Kartikeyan's doing.
It's a beautiful way to start major programs, because it's traditional that you start by bringing the light of God into the room before you start the other parts of the program.
And as you can see over Roma's head, it's all right, there was one of Shanti Dev's spiritual eyes from Assisi. This is an art form called Rangoli, and it's just with colored chalk and flowers to make these beautiful decorative designs on the floor for big functions and celebrations. And that's Jyotish at the Chennai public talk. That was the next day after the, don't switch yet, after the Oh, wow, okay.
I think we're going back, but
Okay. And this beautiful backdrop, Surya did that for them. And they had it printed. He did the graphics and had it printed there in India.
after we were in Chennai, we had a little break at Ananda's retreat property that's up near Raniket in about 7,000 feet in the Himalayan foothills. And we try to do a annual retreat there and a little bit of seclusion. And this is that's the view from the front deck.
And that little temple to the left, that's what we were standing in front of. And so the sort of big center peak is Nanda Devi, which is all of these mountains are considered to be deities. And when we were there, it was clear every day. People tell us that often you can't see them at all, but they're considered deities and they reveal themselves to you. So that's Nanda Devi. To the right is something called Trishul. And then to the left, that's sort of in clouds, that's called Panchachuli. And the Panch means 5. And that Panchachuli, according to legend, that's where the 5 Pandava brothers ascended before they dropped their physical form. So it's a very sacred region. Jyotish and I were there for 2 days, and then Dhyana and Pia joined us. That's Pia on the right and Dhyana.
This is a little Shiva temple.
And then we went on to Mumbai. This was a big public talk we did there. And you can see Sadhana Devi. This is the choir singing. And you know, when we started, it was mainly Westerners. Now, as you can see, there's, I think, 2 Westerners in there and all the rest are Indians. And we're watching, I don't know if you all seen the incredible video that Rachel did. It's like she did it for India. It's like a 3-minute introductory video about who Jyotish and I are, because a lot of people don't know who we are over there. So what we're watching is a film clip of Jyotish from 1979 talking about how he met Swami.
And then what Rachel has done is incredible, because she'll take a clip from 79 and segue into a modern clip, and I'm basically saying the same thing.
Which is a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
But it really was helpful to introduce. Okay. Oh, this is the Sagar.
This is a whole audience there.
And then the next day we had a Kriya initiation, and you can see Devarshi Jaya. Sagar is the monk on the left. He's one of the main center leaders there in Mumbai. And then these are all the new Kriya bonds, but there were a total of probably, I don't know,
70 or 80.
Yeah.
Mumbai is very, very fertile ground for these teachings. Almost every class that they start, and they start a new, what we would call how to meditate, level 1 class, about every 2 months, and they get 75 to 100 people at every one of them.
So then this is the only shot we had of Bangalore, but this is, if you remember last year, we had a retreat and we went to the same place. Last year we only were able to get half of the facility. This is a beautiful, very spiritualized property that's dedicated to, it's called the School of Ancient Wisdom, and it's for spiritual groups to have retreats. Last year we only could rent half of it because of previous reservations, but this year we got the whole of it. So we had 140 people for the weekend retreat. And there's a beautiful statue of a light bearer. It kind of gets lost there, but it's huge. And there's just Roman Haridas are in charge of the Bangalore Center.
But it's kind of a all-country gathering, so all India gathering, and so 140 people, but it filled up in 1 day or 2 days. So,
And now we're at Pune. These are the monks. This is the new temple. It's not finished yet, obviously, but so talk about the wall.
yeah, the wall behind us, and you, just behind me, obscured, is a marble statue of Yogananda that they had carved. But the wall behind was like the wall to the right, just brick and rough concrete.
The day
The day
before.
before. So they came in and, plastered it. So
On the actual, is this in the where the community is?
Yes.
this is at the community.
We're still running the part of it that's the retreat. And so retreat activities are going on there all the time. And part of the man in the white shirt, this is Amal Parki, he's the one that's been heading up the project and kind of orchestrated this ceremony. You can see there's a huge pile of coconuts. And part of what you do at a dedication is you crack open a coconut. So we all had to do that. And yeah, this was my maiden voyage. I'd never cracked a coconut. And so I didn't know how hard you needed to do it. So I just smashed it. And the pieces just flew up in the air. Anyway, it was fun. We all got to crack coconuts. And someone said humorously later, they probably did that because they wanted to make coconut chutney. So then they had all these broken coconuts. And we'll tell you what this is in a minute. We were supposed to give a major talk in Pune City. They had rented a big auditorium, but 2 days before, Jaya came in looking very chagrined, and he said, "We've got a problem. There's a big political rally happening, and it's going to be right in front of the facility that we're supposed to give it at, and they're blocking off all the streets, and sometimes these things turn violent, and there's no way people are going to come." And so we just said, okay, we'll shift it to our very small center, city center in Pune, and they had done it to be kind of a talk on creativity and the arts. So all these, they had printed lots of Jyotish's prints, Dana's, Shamani's, and had all sorts of products. But it worked fine. And about 150 people got crammed in to the center. And it was supposed to go all day from 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning till 7 at night. We spoke in the morning. Then they had a catered lunch, Finding Happiness, and there was an art workshop and a music workshop, and 50 brand new people, first time in our door, stayed for the entire day. So maybe this is just what was supposed to happen. They became part of our family instead of just being at a big public talk. And these are some of the people that came. Everybody got an AY.
Yeah, everybody, as a gift, everybody got an autobiography.
And the woman with the orange kurta scarf in dupatta.
Down at the bottom right.
Yeah, she was our hostess. We stayed with her, Snehal. And this is the the Pune City Center. Jaya meditates here every morning and many nights. And these are some of the core members. And then this was a all India center leader retreat that we had out at the property. You recognize most of the people. The woman in white on the right her name is Shama, and she's head of the West Delhi Center. And then Sagar next to Dharmini, half cut off is Dr. Aditya, who many of you know. But this is Swami's house in the Chennai property. And we had actually a fascinating day. The morning was in this same room where we are. There were about, 80 of us, because all the rest, and then in the afternoon just the leaders met, but in the morning the other 65 people were young people who are helping to run the centers. and doing promotion and administration, marketing, teaching. And so they all met in the afternoon, led by Gaurav, who many of you know. And then we pulled off and talked about other things. But it really felt like a new beginning, new temples, new centers, new launching of, we're getting, for Bangalore, we're hiring a woman to take over all the administration functions so Hari and Roma can just focus on teaching and serving others. And same thing for Delhi, for Diane Keshava. Diana already has this in place. So, and Sagar, this young man we keep mentioning in glasses yellow, brilliant young guy, was doing graduate work here in the US at MIT, and then just said, that's not what I want to do with my life. And he came back and is a monk. He's going to be our kind of secretary in India, so he can handle all the details there.
Each year we meet with the center leaders and set the entire program for the coming year. And so last year, one of the major programs was to train new teachers, and we've trained about 60 or 70 now in various things. In Pune city, 2 weeks before we were there, they had 12 classes simultaneously going on with teachers that have been trained over and in 3 different languages. And so that was a big push last year and expansion of the outreach. This year, one of the big pushes is to get staff, Indian staff, to do all of the kind of what we would think of as being a center manager. So all of the financial and advertising and websites and all of that, leaving the acharyas to teach.
And Devarshi, who you see standing there, is doing extremely well. He said he and 5 other monks are living in Pune city and the beginning seed of a monastery, and they're doing it's really gelling, it's happening. And Devarshi said his health hasn't been this good in 20 years. He was having a lot of pain and couldn't sit. It's all gone. He told us he was having some nerve pains in his legs so that he couldn't sit and meditate very long. And then when he was moving down to Pune to really start the monastery, he said, I just prayed to Master, if you want me to lead the monks, you have to help me to meditate. And he said the pain went away, and now he can sit and meditate. So this
is the final little section. We ended with a retreat and pilgrimage to Puri, which is, of course, where Sri Yukteswar had an ashram. Master visited there often, probably walked on the very sands where we are. And so we had a retreat to go to Sri Yukteswar's. This is where his body is, right under that plaque.
And this is an illegal picture that Daya took, because you're not supposed to take pictures. But anyway, we meditated there, and if you read our blogs, we talked about it. Tremendous, tremendous power and vitality and presence of Sri Yukteswar.
20 years ago, we were there with Swamiji and meditated right in this spot for a long time.
Then we went to another ashram. This is Totapuri. If those of you who have read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, this was Ramakrishna's guru, who Ramakrishna had many teachers, but this was the one who Ramakrishna would have visions every night of Divine Mother in the form of Kali. And Totapuri, he was a Naga sadhu, didn't wear clothes. This is the only ashram dedicated to him in all of India, because he just was a wandering sadhu, and somehow Ramakrishna connected with him, and Totapuri said, you must go beyond form, and he took a piece of glass from the ground and ground it into Ramakrishna's forehead at the point between the eyebrows and said, concentrate here, and when Kali appears, slice through her mentally, and he did, and then he went into the highest state of cosmic consciousness. So Totapuri's body is under this statue, and there's only one, it's a beautiful ashram, about 30 acres outside of Puri, and there's only one monk that lives there, because he really didn't have a work. He was just a wandering sadhu. But the man was telling us about him, and he died in 1961 at the age of 330.
This banyan tree has a beautiful story. One night, Totapuri took two of his disciples, took them, you can go in amongst the roots. That's kind of like a cave. And he had them sit there and meditate for 3 days, and then they went into samadhi. So this is a group, part of the group. We had about 70 pilgrims, so this is part.
And then this is the beach, and this picture, Radhika didn't want to put it in, but we just insisted. So, but as Jyotish said, there's a beautiful picture of Ananda Ma near this spot. Shri Yukteswar would take, his little processions of the little ashram residents, walk along the beach, and so it's a very sacred beach in and of itself.
Now a lot of people, it's got an extremely famous temple, a Jagannath temple, one of the biggest and holiest in all of India, and tens of thousands of people come. So where there are people, there are merchants.
Yeah.
And
the Jagannath temple is not open to Westerners, so all the pilgrims could go, but we couldn't go. And they say they don't really know when it was built. It could be many thousands of years old. And people, all of our pilgrims went, and they said it was, it's really crowded, thousands of people. They said, but if you could just go off quietly and be by yourself, there was a wonderful power there. If you remember in the New Path, Swami got permission from the Shankaracharya in the late 50s. He was one of the few Westerners ever to be allowed inside. And when we went with him in 1996 to Puri, he went to the ashram of the Shankaracharya to try to get permission for all of us to go, but the Shankaracharya was gone, and just his secretary was there, and he couldn't give us permission, so we didn't get to go in.
And that's it. So, any questions? One of the interesting things that happened while we were there is that we just thought that maybe we weren't keeping up on things, because we woke up one morning and there was news on the internet that said that all of the money was demonetized, and that basically all of the cash above what we would think of as fives and ones was no longer legal. We thought, well, we've been missing the news on this, but it was a secret thing. Only 5 people in India knew about it, because all of the black money was kept in cash. And people who dealt in black money, meaning people who were trying to avoid taxes, is the major reason, but the three strong reasons for it. People try to avoid taxes. So in real estate, you bought and sold half with white money, half with black money. So if you bought a house for, say, $200,000, you would pay $100,000 in white money, and the owner of that house would have to pay taxes on that. You'd pay the rest in cash. Well, people had special rooms built where they filled up with cash. So overnight, nobody knew about it. 5 people in the country knew about it. Overnight, all of that cash became illegal. And so
The whole country was
the whole country went into enormous disruption, because it's a cash economy. And so those who were doing black money, and also there was a lot of black money from corrupt officials. So if you're corrupt officials accepting bribes, which it was extremely common, I mean, that's partly why we've had such trouble with the Pune property, is because bribes were demanded that we refused to pay, and therefore we don't have permits even after 10 years. Anyway, so corrupt officials had all this money in cash, and overnight that became a big problem for them, because Modi is the head of the country. He's a yogi, gets up at 4 in the morning, meditates, does yoga for an hour, meditates for a couple of hours, and
Works 15 hours a day, sleeps a couple of hours, and never takes a break. So he's really the Dharma.
Yeah, very dharmic man. But his own party is not necessarily of that same caliber. So there's a lot. That's why the riot or the rally in Pune was going on, because people were protesting. The other reason for it was that there were quasi-governmental printing presses in Pakistan, printing counterfeit rupees, 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, and that was funding terrorism. So overnight, all of that got taken away, and there was tremendous disruption for a few weeks while we were there, but 90% of the people of the country, even though greatly inconvenienced, were behind this. And so
I think we mentioned for the last month of our stay, we didn't have any cash. We were using credit cards as we could. And you would see these huge lines at the ATM. And they actually, the 500 they're printing new ones, but the 1,000 rupee note will no longer be printed. They're going to the 2,000 rupee note. So not to tip their hands, they did not print the money in advance. So there was no money to be had even, So anyway, it was very interesting.
yeah, interesting times. Okay.
Any other questions? We thank you so much for your prayers. They really sustained us. I mean, we could feel them every single day. And, our health, our energy, our enthusiasm, and ability to keep up a pretty demanding schedule, it just was there. And we knew it wasn't us who was doing it.
We spent a lot of time in the most polluted air on the planet and never got sick a day till the very, very end, when it's like you need a little karmic payoff period before you transit to the next phase.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your support.
So in summary, Ananda's work is doing well. Yogananda and his team must be really pleased with the way things are going. God bless you all.